Hello, this is Luke Turner, and I'm back with another episode of building an exercise tracking web app from scratch. Not really sure what we're going to work on today. Let's just get started here with the usual steps. First, we have to run the database. Then we run our client code bundler. Then in a new terminal window, we run the server. And then once that's done, we can open up the web app in our Chrome browser. Okie doke. Now let's take a look at the notes here, see what we have to potentially add. So improving error handling, that's always important. Improving the landing page. We're nearing the point where I kind of feel like I want to do that, but still want to make some more changes here before spending too much time on the landing page, because that's going to include taking some screenshots. Some kind of usual stuff. Dark mode to user level settings could be interesting. And down here we have some ideas of new features. This one we actually did already. Let's put that at the bottom. I like the idea of a quick view from the exercise history, or of exercise history. Yeah, so I'm thinking this one, maybe quick view, and also I kind of want to add sortability for the sets. So maybe we can start on those. So these are both changes to the today page. So one thing here, like we have this, you add a new set for a given exercise, you can fill out these values. It would be nice, part of the problem, like say I'm at the gym doing an exercise, I might not remember what I did for that exercise the last time I did it. And so I want to be able to easily reference that kind of historical information. And right now, what I need to do is go to manage exercises and then open this thing here and kind of assess things on this page. But what I really want to maybe be able to do is actually just see that right here with like a little drop down type of thing. So I might go ahead and add that. The other thing is, say I add another set here, and like this one's 12 at 30 pounds, doesn't really matter. This one's 10 at 30 pounds. And I might want to be able to rearrange these. Like say I forgot to record something, I add it as a set, but now it's below all the other sets. It's not in the correct order. Perhaps I want to be able to adjust that. So let's think about those two changes here for starters. So part of it is, when we're implementing drag and drop functionality, there is you can use the HTML drag and drop spec to do that, right? There's kind of two questions when you're talking about sorting. And one of those is, how do you implement that in the UI, where it responds to the click events to drag and drop things in the appropriate place and adjusting things in the DOM. And the other is, how is that represented in the database itself? So if I move one of these things and then refresh the page, how is that state, persisted? So when it comes to the UI side, in the past I've had good luck with this library sortable.js. So I might just reuse this. This is a pretty simple, kind of standalone library. It doesn't depend on React or anything like that. And it makes it easy to add sortability to basically a list of DOM elements of some kind. So that's one thing. In fact, let's just install this and get started here. So can I install this with Node. I think so, right? Yeah. So let's just copy this part. We're going to do bun install sortable.js. And really, I could have put that as a dev dependency because it's not going to be used server side. It's only used client side. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. I think that's fine. Chart.js is another example where it could be a dev dependency. Ultimately, I might clean that up. The idea of a dev dependency here is that they're only actually used when building the client-side bundle. It's not actually needed at runtime because it's all been built into the bundle at that point, but that's all right. So now we've got sortable.js installed. And if we go to the today page here, we're going to want to add sortability to these things. You know, basically these cells, or no, this part really, this fixed grid thing. We're going to want to make it sortable. So let's actually take a look at what that looks like here. So what kind of DOM are we using here? So it's just nothing special. And a sortable, I don't know what this example one thing really is. I guess that's a reference to the DOM node. So let's go ahead and try it here. So I'm going to add a function in my JavaScript file here. Export function make sortable ID, and for now that should be fine. We're going to need to add more parameters to this later, but we got to figure out what those are. So in here, basically, we're going to do something like this. And the sortable, like this, needs to be imported. And let's look at the GitHub docs again. It had an example of that import happening. Looks like it's just a default import. I don't really know if we're going to need any plugins or what, but for now we can just use this. And so now this example one instead is going to be like document.get element by ID. Is my understanding. And let's just do that for starters. Make sortable. Okey-doke. So kind of a problem here now is we have, you know, elements for each of these. Let's go back to the today page for a moment. We have elements for each of these rows, but there's no actual element that encapsulates all of that. So maybe I'll put just a simple like div dot set list thing here. And I'll give that a ID as well, set list. And then this whole block, let's just do that. This whole block needs to get indented, not that part though. So now if we refresh the page, it should look the same. Oh, I got to restart the server after installing that package. Okey-doke. Should look the same, but we have that set list thing there. So then, you know, I could put this kind of anywhere, but I'm just going to put it here for now. If we do like a script, I guess just plain old script. Let's just do this. And then inside here, we're going to have text, which is going to be make sortable set list, right? Let's see what that actually renders here. Script makes sortable set list. Yeah. So technically that should have made these sortable. Did it run something? Make sortable is not defined. Oh, it would be exercise tracker dot make sortable, right? Okey-doke. L must be an HTML element. So it's not finding the set. Does this need to be below it maybe? Let's see. So that it doesn't run the code until after that thing happens, or after that thing is added to the DOM. Yeah, so now in theory, you can see here I'm clicking and dragging and I'm able to sort these different rows in the array, just like that. And that's one of the nice things about sortable is it really is just that simple to make something sortable. But we do still need to handle a bunch of other things, of course. One thing is, so if I switch this to responsive view, does it still allow you to do that? Yes, it does. So this is emulating like a user's touch and drag instead of emulating like a click and drag like this. So both of those seem to work. But there's something here where it's like if I click on one of these and drag, like I don't necessarily want this whole row to have that interactivity. What we want is like a handle, right? So there is an option for doing handles here. And so this is what we're going to add to the sortable. So probably this doesn't need to be an option to the function. We can just do like handle is the dot handle class. Seems fine. And then here for each of these rows, we're going to need to add an instance of that, like a div with that class. So where do we want that? Suppose I just do it right here. Handle with an H. And we're going to need to probably put an icon in that handle. But for now, okay, yeah, so that isn't exactly what I want because it's not aligned in the same row. This isn't exactly what I want either because it's in a, or it's spaced equivalently to the other things, which isn't really what we want. Let's take a look at Bulma here, Bulma docs. If we can make like a nice short column, or a short cell, I mean, that would sort of be ideal. Grid cells, can I do a, don't really want that. So this here we have a fixed grid. Doesn't really say there. A smart grid doesn't really have an option there. If I just added a width to this, just out of curiosity, or a style width 1 rem. Yeah, it still doesn't really work. So basically we don't want this in the grid. But we do want it to render in the same row. And so what I could, maybe if I just switch this to a span for now, will that help? Not really. What I can do is have this all be wrapped in, say, like a flexbox thing. So like if I do dot flex, I'm going to use the Bulma things again here. Let's see, flexbox. So like dot is flex and then dot is flex direction row. Is flex direction row. And then let's see what that does. didn't really do what I wanted. What's the problem here? Set list. For each one of these, there's, oh, I have to actually indent all this, right. Right. So now it's actually inside the flex. So now that works, but we've got another problem. This other stuff might need to be, is flex grow 1? Okay, so now it's kind of looking like what I would hope for. Obviously this anchor needs to be styled differently though. So first of all, let's put an icon in here. And I can make this a div now instead of a span. It doesn't really matter which it is. Actually, it seemed to have a bit of an effect there, which is interesting. No, I guess that was just actually dragging them changes the spacing. Not entirely sure what's up with that, but for now we can just finish working on this handle here. So, div. So what we're going to want to put in here is an icon probably. Let's look at the tabular icons. And something like, there might be an icon specifically called handle. Doesn't really look like it. What we want is sort of like those dots. Usually that's, to me, is like a handle. For dragging and dropping is like this one, grip. Grip vertical, I guess. So in here we would have a icon, mixin, grip vertical. Okie doke. And then that we kind of want to have be aligned with everything else. And we could do that ourselves, but we could also make that an actual button, which might help if we make it like a white button. So like div.handle.button, is that gonna, what's that gonna be like here? I mean, it kind of worked, but the height of the button is a bit too large. That didn't really help. So kind of what I'm seeing is the problem here is this button is taking up the full vertical space of this row, but this other div, like the grid, has this padding at the bottom. Let's see if we look at the layout or computed. Okay, it's margin. So it's got this margin at the bottom, 16 pixels. What is that calculated based on? Margin block and 1 EM. So if we had the same thing here, for example, maybe using a margin class. So it'd be like MB4. Then maybe it'll be better aligned. Yeah, so now we kind of have that like that. And take out the is small. Okay. And we don't really want that to be visually interactive. Like when I hover over it, I don't really want it to have that like gray box. Which does make you wonder if like maybe button is not actually the most suitable type here, but seems not terrible. Maybe I'll switch it to like is ghost and see what that's like. Is ghost. So that is making it styled like a link, which I don't really like. I preferred the other one, really. Maybe I actually want to use that static thing. So if I do is white, is static, right? Yeah. Well, that, I don't really like that either. What if I put that before the is white? Does that really matter? No. Okay, let's just get rid of that for now. And leave it at this. So we have the dragging handle, and I might change the way that that's styled because it's a little bit odd, but whatever. And the idea now is like if I click here and drag, nothing happens. But if I click on the handle, I can reorder these sets. And again, the spacing thing's kind of odd. Eventually we'll have to deal with that, but whatever. So fine. We don't really need a lot of this other fancy stuff here. But we do need to add a handler. Let's look at the docs. There must be like a reference. Yeah. So we need something to happen when an event is moved. So I think that would be like this on update function here. Or maybe this on move function is probably the one we're going to want. So let's define that over here. On move. And that will accept an event, an original event. And this is going to have some of these different fields. So event.dragged. So let's do just to see here, event.dragged. So now if I drag this guy down here, we should see something which is that particular thing. So part of the thing here now, though, is like we need to notify the server when this happens. So we're going to need to do some sort of AJAX request. I'm just going to make this async. And I think that should work. Or do I get an error? I think that should work. Yeah. And part of the problem now, though, is in order for the server to know what set was moved, we need to have that set ID. But the actual sortable.js thing just knows about the DOM nodes. There might be some way to work around this within sortable.js itself. I don't really know exactly if there's a better option, but what I'm going to do is just add a attribute to the DOM node, like the root one here, which is this. And this will, I might put this form inside here too and see what that does actually. Does that kind of fix the spacing issue? Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then in here, we're going to add a data set ID is set.id, just like that. So now, if I drag this, we have this data set ID. So this can now we could do like const set ID equals event dot dragged dot get attribute data set ID. See what that looks like. So now we drag one of these, we get the set ID logged here as a, a string probably. So now we need to I'm kind of trying to think about this function a little bit. Like, do we want this function to fully encapsulate the logic of calling the backend with the update? In which case it's really not make sortable, it's like make sortable set list. Or do we want this make sortable function to be more general in case we do want to sort other things? In which case, so like another example I'm thinking of is like for these manage exercises, maybe we would want to sort this list as well in the future. So maybe I will actually just make this like make sortable ID, and then we would have like an on move handler. And so then this would be like data sort or data, let's call it data ID. Because if we call it data set ID, it's not going to make sense for things that aren't sets. And then this is just going to call on move with that ID. I don't know if we really need anything else, but if we do, we can add it to that. Okay. And then I might just make another function here where it's like make sortable set list. And this one, I guess I could have an ID for that too. And let's add it down here before I forget. Okay. And this one's going to call make sortable ID, and we're going to pass in a onMove function here. So async function. It's going to take an ID. Oops. And it's going to do something with it. And really, I guess this could return sortable. Doesn't really matter too much yet, but we might want that in the future. Okie doke. So what is this going to do? It's going to call basically a new route that is going to be used to sort these things. So for now, let's just do like const resp equals await fetch. And it's going to be like slash sets slash ID slash move, maybe, and method post, and body new URL search params. An object, and inside here we're going to have new position is new pause. And this is going to be something that needs to be passed into this function as well, it seems. So let's see. What does this dragged event have for me? So it's got to and from. Or no, that's on end. This one has Maybe I actually want this on end function, because kind of what I want to know is like the, where it's actually moved to in the list here. Basically this new index. So let's use on end, and this can be called whatever, it doesn't really matter. And so we're going to also have the const. Actually, let's just do it this way. So here, this is also going to have event dot new index. And I'll just call that new index here as well. Okay. So now let's just see what happens here. Open up the network tab, drag a thing. Oh yeah, I actually have to update the today page to use this other function. Now drag a thing. It's not, cannot read property of undefined, get attribute. Oh yeah, okay. So this was called event.item, I believe, for the onEnd function, right? Drag it. Okay, so now we get that logged. And in the network tab, we have this call to move, which I'm surprised it's not returning like a 404. It's just not returning anything at all, but okay, fine. One of the things I noticed, I forgot to actually put the ID in here. Okay, right? Move it. So we get this move request. And so we kind of need to implement that now. Let's go to the index page here. So we've got sets ID. Here's like sets ID delete. There's sets ID update. Let's just kind of copy this one here. And we can add a new route for sets ID move. And the reason this is a new route is because we're going to be updating more than just this one set. So it doesn't make sense to try and reuse this sets ID route here. It's more like implementing the move semantics, which is separate from just doing a RESTful update to that set. Okay. And so this part we don't need. And it's not going to redirect at all. It's just going to send status 200. And so now if I, just as a simple example, if I move one, it calls that, I get a 200. Cool. Okay, so now we need to implement the database logic for moving things, moving sets. When it comes to moving things, and in fact, just like storing the order of things in general, there's really a few different approaches you can take. If we look at the schema we have here, we have for sets, there's like this order, which is, basically the order that that set is in that day, where if it's like set 0, that is shown before set 1, before set 2, etc. It's separate from the set ID, which we could have just used the ID, but now that we have the ability to rearrange these, it's possible for a lower ID set to actually have a higher order. They're not necessarily in ID order anymore. Until we added this drag and drop, they actually would have always been in ID order. So one thing is we can, if the set is moved to some new index, we can just update the order to point to that new index. And that works, right? The problem is that there's already going to be a set at that index, potentially. So, if I move this one up, that set is now at index 0, order 0. but there was already a set at order 0, which was the number 10 one here. So we also need to move that one to 1, So basically the order of these two things is getting flipped. And flipping them is fine, but if we have a few more in here, and let's actually call these like 1, 2, 3, 4, just to make it a little more obvious here. So, if I move 4 up here, we actually have to change the order of 4 to the new value. And we also have to increment the order of 1, 2, and 3 because those were shifted downwards as part of this operation. And then if I move 4 back down, we update 4 and we also have to decrement 1, 2, and 3 because those were moved up. If I move 4 up here, then we have to increment 2 and 3, but 1 stays the same. So there's some kind of logic that we have to figure out around exactly how that works. And we're going to have to be touching a lot of rows potentially. If I have a bunch of sets, we're going to potentially be touching all of the rows for all of the sets if I move something from the bottom to the top. As an alternative, one option is you can implement these things as like a linked list, where sets instead track the previous set and the next set. And then if you move something, all you have to do is change the pointer from the previous set and the next set for the two related things, but you don't have to update all of these other rows in between. Like, if I've got, put this back in order. If I move 4 to the top, all I have to do is change the next set for 4 to be 1 and the previous set for 1 to be 4, but I don't have to adjust the linkages between 1, 2, and 3 at all. Just a linked list, right? The problem with that is when you actually go to query for these, the nice thing about having this order column is I can use that as a simple order by clause in the SQL query, and that ordering is automatically enforced on the loaded rows. If I'm using that linked list functionality, then I actually have to somehow order it by that linkage, either on the client after doing the SQL query, or by which I mean the server, the bun server after doing the SQL query, or, somehow in that SQL, which kind of sounds like a pain. So another option, which, is kind of interesting, is you could think like, well, if I have these in this order and say I move 4 here, we've got 1, 4, 2, 3. I could rename the order of 4 to 2.5, right? Something between 1 and 2. And now all of a sudden, everything is sorted fine. The problem is that if people keep dragging things around over time, that granularity will have to become more and more narrow. So like now, if I move 3 here, 4 is at 1.5. And now 1 is at 1, and 3 has to be at 1.25. And then if I move 4 up here, now this 4 has to go from 1.5 to 1.125 or whatever. And you get these like increasingly precise decimals that need to be tracked, which is a little bit confusing, a little bit annoying. And ultimately, if the person is really dragging these around, it'll get to the point where you run into the limits of accuracy with floating points. And it's like you can't drag things anymore, which just seems weird. It's like your ordering would start to glitch out after a while. So one other solution, there's like with Jira, for instance, Atlassian Jira, they have a unique sort algorithm, or really it's like an ID for that display order, which it's like this alphanumeric string that when you move something between two other things, it adds a new value to the end of that to indicate that it's between those two things. And I wonder, like, let's see, Jira sort ID. Does it have anything to say? I don't know. This is all about how to sort it as a Jira user. I kind of wanted more about the implementation. But anyway, basically they have a thing where it's like, it's not numeric. So you don't run into the limitations of floating points. But what you do get is sort of this increasingly long sort ID as you drag and drop things more and more. It's like adding more specificity each time. So that would be an option that we could do. It's kind of complicated though. The reason Jira does that is because you might have 10,000 cards. And if you move one from one place to another, you really don't want to have to update the order for all of those other 10,000. For this particular case though, we're only updating the order of the other sets within a given day. And maybe somebody creates 1 million sets. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. But practically speaking, the number of sets a person has in a given day is probably going to be limited unless they're abusing the tool, because a person can only do so many exercises, right? There might be like 100 if you're a crazy person, a gym rat. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So I'm actually going to do the approach that I talked about first, where we're just going to switch the order for all of the different related things. So if I move 4 to here, we would move 4 and then increment 2 and 3. Okay, so let's do that. Let's figure that out here. So we're going to do an update. I'm actually going to copy this update here because that way I don't have to refigure it out. So the ID. So what we're actually going to be setting here is some kind of order. And this is going to be, we're going to need a z.object. It's going to be passed through in the body. So we're going to need to parse this out of the body. And this is going to be called, what did I call it? Over here. New position. I might just call this order to be consistent. So this would be like order is a number, say. And this would have body order. What's the problem here? Oh, it's not liking this because I need to pass in the order. Okay. So now, let's just try it like this. So if I drag, we get an error. So this should actually be, it's not a number, unfortunately, it's a string. And this would be like parse int order 10. Fine. So now I drag and it works. So let's actually look at in the database here. See what we've got here. So we've got these sets, and we have this problem now though where we have 2 sets with order of 1, which isn't really right. And so in the UI, which exactly of these comes first is sort of random. Now it happens to look like it's doing it in the way that I would hope, where I dragged 4 to the top, and when I refresh the page, it's still at the top. But that's kind of just a coincidence, because we're sorting it by this order here, but that's not defined. And I guess the 1 should be split between the order. It's like 1 and, oh, sorry, this one's actually a different day. So that's kind of interesting. So hold on a minute here. If I move 4 back up to the end and refresh this, what's going on now? So now that's set to a 3. Okay, so what I'm seeing is the order is 0 indexed. when returned by sortable.js. But the way that we've been storing the order in the database is one indexed. So this would actually, I'm just going to increment this. Doink. What are you complaining about now? Sure. Okay. So the problem is just updating this is not all we need to do. And we actually have this unique constraint on the order, which, as you can see, we violated here. We have two things with the same date, the same user ID, and the same order, which shouldn't actually be possible. But for whatever reason, there was an issue earlier in one of the very first episodes where the Drizzle ORM was not actually generating these unique constraints in the migration, despite them being defined here in the schema code. And so the migration, or the, constraint is not actually being applied. Still, in theory, we might want to add this constraint, but it does make it difficult when moving these. So I'm going to worry about that in a minute. But first we're going to, basically we need to do another update here. And kind of trying to think about the best approach. So yeah, let's just do what we need to do here. And it's not very efficient and we can adjust it later maybe, but for now this is going to be fine. So first we need to know the current order for this set as well. And so that's something that we can easily pass in from here, where like we have this new index and we can also just pass in the old index too. And we can do like old index. Fine. And maybe I should do this like old order, old index +1, and new order, new index +1. And then on the server, we don't have to deal with this incrementing stuff because that's not really something that, like it depends on how that client-side library is handling those indexes. So having it kind of normalized to the actual order on the client makes the most sense to me. And now we have old order and new order. And so here we're going to have like old order and new order. Numeric string schema. Save. Okay. And let's do this. So this is going to be new order. Okay, so I might call it, just do body here, and then we can say like const old order equals parse int body dot old order 10. And do the same thing for the new order, so that we actually have these as variables, and then we can put that in like that. Okay, so now we need to kind of think about what we're doing here. First, let's actually get all of the other sets for this day. db.select from sets table. And then we can do something like with this. Actually, we have a helper function for this, don't we? Like get sets or day. Yeah. And this is going to take the date, which I'm going to need to pass into the, actually, let's do this. So existing set equals get set. I don't have a thing to just get the set by ID, so I'm just going to do this here. Let's make a new function for that. So under sets, I'm going to do like export async function get set by ID. And set ID number user ID string. Going to continue to include the user ID as a requirement in all of these, just so that this function can actually not return that set if it doesn't belong to the given user. This would be user ID, and this would be ID, set ID. And, we're not updating this. We're just doing dot select, dot from. Okay. Simple enough. So now here we're going to do get set by ID. And it's going to be parse int ID 10 and user.id. And await that. Okay. Okay. So we've got our existing set. And kind of the reason for that is, we don't know the date that we need to actually look up unless we have that existing set already. So now we can do like existing set. Let's update this function actually to return just the one value. Just do that. Sure. So now this is going to be existing set dot date. That's a string. And then this also needs the user ID. Okay, so now we have const all sets. So now we're going to want to, let's look at this get sets for day function. This should return them, order by the order already. So I don't know if there's a good way to do this with one SQL query, is what I'm thinking. Like there might be, but for now I'm just going to do a bunch of queries. Let's go for the simple approach. Set of all sets. And then we could say like, if set dot order is greater than old order. Let's think about what case we're handling here, because there's actually going to be two cases that we need to think about, one when we're dragging up and one when we're dragging down. So if the set.order is greater than the old order, this is trying to handle the case where we're dragging. Let's actually look at that thing here. So we're dragging down, right? I guess it doesn't necessarily make sense, but let's assume that the new order is greater than the old order. So like we're dragging this 1 down to here. In this case, the old order is 1 and the new order is going to be 3. Right? Did that, I have to refresh the page here. Oh, what are you complaining about now? Oh, well, it's just, yeah. So now if I drag this down, old order, not a number, new order 3. So really, we don't actually need to pass in that old order either at the moment. Because we could get that from the set that we loaded from the database. But there is also the possibility that that order is not correct anymore. So maybe we want to add a quick check for that here. Like if old order, it's going to have to be after this part here. If old order is not equal to existing set dot order, then we have a mismatch between the client and the server. Somebody maybe in another tab has rearranged this set. So here we would like throw an error. Set or cannot move set order as please refresh the page. Sure. Doesn't really matter. Okie doke. And so now let's try this again. Drag it down here. Old order 1, new order 3. So when that happens, obviously we need to rename this. And we also need to update the order for the thing that was order 2 and the thing that was order 3 to decrement them. So it's like if set is greater than old order and set.order is less than or equal to new order, I think something like that, then we're going to want to do one of these. And the order is going to be the set.order -1. And this is going to be set.id. Let's try that. Okay, so put that back up there. These are going to be all out of order now in the database because I have been moving it with this like half implemented function. Let's just actually fix them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and just commit that. Okay. So now if I move 1 down here, it should update the order of 1, and it should also update the order of 2 and 3 to reduce them by 1. So we can see that the order of 1 is now 3, which is right. The order of 2 is 1, and the order of 3 is 2. So now that order is, correctly persisted in the database. I can refresh the page, and that'll be fine. If I move 3 down here, then the order of 3 is now 4. The order of 4 is 3. The order of 2 is 1. The order of 1 is 2. So it makes sense. And I got logged out. Log me back in. Okay. Okay, so that's good for the case where we're moving things down. But if I were to try to move something up now, it's going to do not what we expect. Let's see, just to try it. If I move 3 there and then refresh the page, it puts it in the wrong spot. Because when we actually are moving it up, we're going to need to increment some things instead. So let's say like if I'll just add it as another condition here. So like if old order is less than new order, they should never be equal, because if they are equal, the thing didn't actually move. I'm kind of curious now though, if I just like drag it to the same spot. Yeah, so I'm actually going to not even make the call when that happens. So like here I would say like if event.newIndex equals event.oldIndex, then just return. Okay, so now if I drag something to the same spot, it doesn't do anything. There's no reason for that to make a database call, so we don't need to handle that case. Okay, so this is handling the case where something is moving down. The old order is lower than the new order. we also need to handle a case where the old order is higher than the new order. So let's go back over here and reorder these again. So that 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Commit that. Refresh. So now they're back in the right order. Now suppose I'm moving something up. So I move 3 up to 1. Right? So the thing that was order 3 is now going to be order 1. Order 1 and order 2 are going to be incremented by 1. Maybe a better example is if I move 4 up to here. Order 4 is now order 2. Order 2 and 3 are now incremented by 1. So if the order of the set is greater than or equal to the new order and less than the old order. So if the order of the set is greater than or equal to new order and it's less than the old order, then we're going to want to update it to add 1. Right? Something like that. It's always a little bit confusing to think through these, like, I don't know, all these kind of order numbering things. It's very nitpicky, but let's refresh this here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So now suppose that I move my, let's actually add another one here. That's 5. And now let's say I move 4 to 2. Okay, and then what's going on in the database? Order 4, let's expand this a little bit, yeah. Order 4 has been moved to 2, as expected. 1 is still the same, as expected. 2 has become 3. 3 has become 4. And 5 is still 5. So if I refresh, as we see, it's looking exactly the same as before the refresh. If I do like 5 up to there, refresh, the order is retained. You know, if I just start dragging some things around, dunk, 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 3, 2, 4, 1, 5. Okay, seems like that's working. So now we've got this ordering thing implemented. And kind of the problem with this is we're doing a bunch of separate SQL queries. So in theory, maybe I could is it possible to do is it possible to increment a value in SQL is what I'm wondering. I think it is. Update. So like we're doing an update set. Yeah, so like in this case, this is incrementing the sales count by referencing the existing column name in the actual set, which is kind of what I want to do here. Which would be, you know, like this. But I don't know how that works with Drizzle, which is our ORM. Let's see if there's a way to do that. So we're going to do an update. I don't want that. Maybe I have to do this like SQL thing. not ideal, order plus 1. And that I need to import from Drizzle. Okay, so that should work still. It's basically doing the same thing as we have here. Let me actually take what I had before that was working and stage this real fast. So that if, in case I horribly break it, I can get back to a working state here. So now we're going to do SQL order plus 1. And up here, we're going to do SQL order minus 1. And that's fine, but that's not really reducing the number of SQL queries. But now kind of the thing is, because we have that, because the order is no longer hard-coded in the query, we can actually move the condition here into the query as well and update all of these sets with one single query. One sec, I gotta blow my nose. Okie doke. So basically we're going to take this if condition and actually put it into the SQL query here. So, you know, there needs to be, let's kind of get these into multiple lines because we're going to be adding some more here. Definitely the user ID still needs to match, but instead of the sets ID, we're actually going to match the date, set.date. And this is going to be existing set.date. And we're also going to need, well, first of all, we're going to need to take these out of the for loop. Hey, you messed up my equal thing. Oh, well, let's just do what it wants me to do for the formatting. And then we also need the set.order to be less than or equal to the new order and greater than the old order. And these need to be imported. Yeah, import this one too. Okay. So now, so you can see here that basically what I did is like this greater than sets table order old order is saying the same thing as this. The order has to be greater than old order. And then similarly here, it's saying the order has to be less than or equal to the new order, which is the same thing that we have here, right? So this SQL query is going to update all of those things at once, basically. And we only want to run this if this condition is set. Yeah, like that. And we're going to need to do the same thing for the alternative, which we've already, so we have this test up here where it's if they're, well, we don't really have a test here. And maybe I will just add something here where it's like if old order equals new order, then here we don't need to do anything. And this shouldn't normally be called because of the logic we have on the client, but we might as well add this check on the server as well. So here we're just going to send status 200 to say, you know, you just tried to sort it to the same spot it already was. We don't have to update the database at all when that happens. So now we can add an else here because we've basically handled the three possible cases. It's like if old order and new order are equal, this happens. If it's less than, this happens. Otherwise, in other words, if it's greater than, we're going to do this other thing. And here, let's copy this bit of code. And, you know, we're going to be incrementing the order, kind of just copying this logic into the SQL query once again. And here, if it's the order is greater than or equal to new order, greater than or equal to new order, or it's less than the old order, just like that. Okay, so now we can get rid of this for loop. Don't need a for loop. And we don't need to actually get all the sets either. And you can see how this is more efficient because now we're doing the whole update using just 2 SQL queries. There's the SQL query that actually moves the thing. And then there's this other SQL query that's going to move everything else that needs to move. And I mean, probably somebody could do it all in one SQL query if you thought hard enough about that, but just getting it down to 2 is good enough for me. Let's get rid of this. One other thing, though, is there's the possibility of one of these things failing for some reason. I kind of want to put these in a transaction. And I'm guessing there's a transaction approach, right? Yeah, so it's this db.transaction business. These are interesting. We don't need anything too fancy here. So let's just do, db.transaction. And it's a function passed into that, right? Yeah, so there's like async transaction. And then all of this is going to go in there. Oops. Yep. And then I believe for those, then I would do tx.update instead of db. So like here, this would be tx, tx, and tx. Okay. So now, in theory, if one of these fails, it's not actually going to end up with orders in a bad state. So like to use an example, if I just like throw a new error, whoops. Let's refresh the page here. So here we've got, well, they're all mixed up, but it doesn't really matter. Say I want to move 3 to the bottom. We get a 500 error. And if I refresh, you know, it's back the way it should be, right? Move 3 to the bottom, refresh. Yeah. It's kind of hard to keep track when they're all in a mixed up order. Let's put them back. We should be able to just like dunk, dunk, and then refresh. It didn't work. Hey. Dunk. What are we getting here? What's the problem? Syntax error at or near order. So, I mean, kind of what that's telling me is probably something to do with this. Is not working. So what is not working about that? Magic SQL operator. Kind of love that. Okay, so what's so magic about it here? So one thing is I should be doing that instead of just order. So it'd be like setstable.order. And the same thing up here. Is that all I need to do? So now if I drag one to the top, it works. If I refresh the page, It's the right order. Drag 2 to the top, it works. Refresh the page, right order. Okay, seems to be working now. So we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if I re-add this throw here, drag this down here, and we get this 500, refresh, and it's back in the right position. Whereas if this wasn't in a transaction, just to give an example, if I don't use that transaction thing here, there's no point in having it in the transaction call. But now if I put this back in, now if I drag something down and refresh, it doesn't, it shouldn't. I mean, I'm kind of trying to replicate an error case here, so it doesn't necessarily strictly matter. Okay, it did. So we've got this thing where it's like there are two things with the same order because they were updated partially. It's not visible in the UI, but that's kind of what I wanted to illustrate. And in fact, let's just put those back to TX. Get rid of that throw new order. Okay. Cool. So that is basically that. You can now drag and drop these things to rearrange them. Let's fix these. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Commit that. Yep. Refresh. And then like dunk. Refresh. 2 is now 1, 3 is now 2, 1 is now 3. Yeah, looking good. Okay, so now what am I doing? So we've implemented the dragging, which is great. We've got a fairly limited or minimal number of SQL queries, which is good. I think I'm just going to go ahead and commit these changes. So first of all, there's like adding the move route, which I'm going to do maybe as its own commit. Add move set route. Okay. Oh yeah, so one of the other things that I did want to do here is in this on-end function, is it possible to abort? Like the onMove function, we have the ability to return some things here. The onEnd function doesn't imply that is the case. But the onMove function doesn't have the old and the new indexes. Is there not a way to, I don't know. Let's see if we try this. So if I return false on the onEnd function, if this throws an error. So let's do this. Try attach e to do toast. Return false. Put this in the try. So now if I, in my backend, if I just like throw an error, what happens if I try to drag something here? So this fails. I don't know if fetch throws an error when things fail or not, actually. Dunk. Does not. Okay, so I guess we kind of need to do something here as well. So this would be like return await on end. And then we would actually want to put the try catch in here. Try catch E return false. Well, let's not do it that way, actually. Let's just leave this one without the try catch. And what we're going to do is throw an error if the response status code is not 200. So if resp.status not equal 200, throw new error, could not move slot or set. Okay. Now what happens? If I try to drag, we get an error, could not move set, but the drag still happens. It doesn't cancel it. Okay, well, I might just do actually something else here. So instead of returning false, which as we saw doesn't work, I'm going to post question mark. I'm actually going to refresh the page because the only reason this would really happen is if the user has, say, gotten automatically logged out, or they, there was like a desync between the client and the server if they dragged one of these sets on a different page. And so we need to sync the client back up to the server again. And we could just throw up a toast where it's like, hey, there was an issue. You need to refresh the page. But instead, I'm just going to refresh it for them. Window.location.reload, right? So now, if I try to drag this down to here, it doesn't work and it reloads the page. Now, it actually, in this example, it actually did work because we threw the error after doing the change. Say we throw it in the transaction instead. Refresh. And then we try to drag this up here. It doesn't work. And the page gets reset to back where it's at its original value. Okie doke. Seems good. So now, we're kind of robust against some of those things. I'm going to add sortable.js as its own commit here. Add sortable.js, its own dependency. I like to do like a separate commit when adding dependencies usually. Just to make it a little more obvious. And then we're going to implement make sortable list, and then in the today page, just some changes. So let's say allow user to sort sets in the today page. Cool. That's another feature down the drain. That doesn't really sound right. Another feature checked off. So quick view. This is another thing that I kind of wanted to get to. The sortable stuff did take a minute, but I sort of knew that that was going to take a minute. It's not always the easiest thing to implement, sortability. So what I want now is actually a, let's look at the today page here. Let's say we want to add another button. Can we add one to the other side of the control? What does that look like? Looks like what I'd hoped for, except it kind of messes up the spacing. Right? Is that messing up the spacing? Yeah, a little bit. Why? What is going on with that? So we've got our control, our field, our other control. It's something to do with this has add-ons, maybe. I don't know if that can only put things on one side. Let's see, that would be under form, I guess. Form, general, has add-ons. Well, I don't really know. It's okay for now, though. So the second add-on is going to be a not is danger for starters. And the icon here is going to be something like so let me explain kind of what I'm thinking here. I want there to be an icon where when you click it, it allows you to see the recent values for this set as like a little panel that expands below the row of parameters. One thing to think about with that, though, as well, is like if we have this in mobile view, which somehow is kind of messed up here. Is that due? That's not due to this, is it? No. It's probably due to this. Like if I just make this a dot or a div, does that... Not sure. So what I'm not liking here is these inputs are not being a fixed size, right? They should be like a fixed grid width. Maybe it's that interfering with it somehow. Don't know. Don't know what's up with that. But I kind of want to I guess, wait to deal with that. I don't want to get too distracted from what I was working on here. So what I was kind of starting to say is like, I want to have this, oops, I don't want this to actually delete anything. I want to have this button here. When I click that, hello. Okay. I guess it's still inside the form, so it's still doing a delete. No, it's not inside the form. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Click X. Okay, I see. Anyway, I'll worry about that in a minute. So what I'm thinking I might want it to do is like expand a section below here where it's like listing the current value of the different things. And it's going to look a little weird in mobile view. Apparently our mobile view is already messed up though. And this is also, yeah, I wish I knew why that was doing what it's doing. If I do that, then that alignment is fixed. If I get rid of this and get rid of this, then that's kind of fixed, but not, it's not exactly right still. If I put this up here, still not quite right. What if I get rid of this altogether? Let's get rid of this and unindent this. Still not quite right. If I get rid of this other X though, it's starting to feel like it might be righter. Yeah. Okay, so I think I understand what's going on here. Let's actually just revert all of the changes here. So kind of the problem, as far as I can tell, is the size of this first column is based on the width of this select, it appears. So if I add another thing to this field, it increases the width of that field. And now the size of this column is based on that field, and the size of this other column is basically whatever's left. I wonder what the best way to deal with that is. I kind of want that to actually be a like in the mobile view, I almost want this field to be separate from all of the other parameters. If I were to actually comment this cell out, gotta get the whole cell here. Like then the other parameters are listed the way that I want them to be. It's something to do with this that's causing that problem. Let's see if there's a way to specifically set that cell width or something like that. If we go grid, fixed grid, grid cells. I mean, I could say that cell like spans 2. cell is call span 2. What does that look like now? Yeah, so now it's actually giving itself the space. The problem is when I do it like this, it looks kind of weird because it's spanning 2 full columns, even though it's not actually taking up 2 full columns of width. And if I narrow to like not fully mobile, like a tablet view, it also looks really weird. Another option is I could just reduce the width of that actual select. Like this select here, I could reduce the width of that. So these cells, like this is using grid, right? Yeah. Is there a way to make sure that the grid like let's say I do like style width 3M. So in order for that to work, I need to make sure to pass that thingy with the attributes onto the select. So that works, and you can see that the alignment is now kind of being handled properly. The problem is obviously the select is way too small. And if I were to increase that to, a width where it's like enough to actually see what's in there, it's going to be too wide for the column. Because of these other icons that we're actually adding. Which makes me think, I actually wonder what would happen if we, let's not pass a width here. And let's straight up get rid of these controls. And this is just then a plain old field. It doesn't have any add-ons. And in fact, I think we can get rid of that field. Yeah. And then what if we put the other things in another cell at the end? So like underneath this each parameters block, we would have like dot cell test. Yeah, so we're putting them kind of at the end there. And maybe that's where we'll put the delete and whatever buttons. So we'll use like one of those button groups, I think is like a thing. Like this, yeah. So it's like dot cell, dot field, dot has add-ons. And then inside of each of these is like dot control. And then button, dot button, And then inside there is like an icon like that. And yeah, let's just see what that does. Okay, so we've got the button icon there. It's not the right height though. Actually, I want to do this one. So it's buttons and then has add-ons. Buttons has add-ons. And then inside there, we just have a list of buttons. Yeah, that's looking better. At least it's centered. Okay, and so and this one's going to be like, is danger, is light, if I recall. And then if we have another one where it's like, just is light, they should be kind of, yeah, connected together here. So we can have some different buttons. I don't know, maybe there's a better way to do this, but for now, that seems fine. And so if we look at the previous stuff here, so this was using that form. We can put that same thing down here. And I mean, really, we could replace this. It might be better to replace this with an actual Ajax request, but for now, I'm just going to do this. Seems fine. And then this other button is going to be expanding a block below the exercise. So underneath this div, and in fact, underneath this whole is flex. Well, let's just do this test. So now that's going to show up on the right, and we want it to show up on the bottom. So really, we kind of want this to have another is flex, I guess. Is flex direction column. And that will have the data ID instead. And then this all gets indented. So now the test should be below it, like that. Yep. And I mean, the handle, well, it's a bit odd, but I'm actually going to do it the other way, where this is flex direction column thing is going to be here instead, and then all this gets indented. And this gets indented. So now it should be on the other side of the handle, yes, but that also broke that other thing a little bit. What's up with that? Is flex grow 1. Yeah, okay. And this is flex grow 1 can go away. Okay, so it's still below. Why is it below that thing? So we've got our row. I guess it's just because of the margin, how the margin happens to be set up there. And then why is this one, why is it so far below? It's a bit annoying exactly how that works. But fine. I'm definitely going to need to fix that later. But for now, I just want to kind of get it set up a little bit. So we're going to use a data show attribute on here to only show this when a certain signal is true. And, this could be something like, one of the things we learned is we want, this is a local signal. It's not going to be sent to the backend, so it should have an underscore in front of it. And this is going to be like underscore expanded sets. Well, let's just call it is plus set.id plus expanded. And then over here, we're also going to need to update that. So we could have like a on or data on click. This is, let's just set it to true. So now if I click this, what's going on here? Oh, I also need to have this, a default value for this defined. So we do like data signals. I think it's something like this equals false. And I don't know if this needs to be in quotes. Let's just quote it. Okay, so now if I click it, I don't like that that's submitting this form. What even is this form used for? It's used for these content type things. So really, this could be maybe taken, like if I do .grid here and put the form inside there, then this other cell is also still, and maybe I'll even put this inside here and undent that. Is that, okay, definitely didn't like that very much. So the problem that I'm running into now is like with this form thing. Maybe if I make that like form.cell. I don't like that it affects the formatting. Why is that a thing? Like, what are these about? It says it's from my user agent style sheet. So that's like built into Chrome, where it's adding some of these styles to the form. I wonder if I can just override those in my, because I don't really want to deal with that. If I do like form Margin, block, and none. 0. Maybe none's not right. Okay, so that gets rid of that style anywhere the forms are used, which I think should be fine. And makes it a little more consistent. Still not perfect, but fine. And so kind of the idea of that now is these should not even be in the form. So if I click this now, it's not actually refreshing the page. It's just toggling this signal. And if I click this X, that still works because it's explicitly referencing the form by ID, by the form name. Okay, so this would be like, we're just going to like toggle that. So now if I click this, it's like expanding, collapsing, expanding, collapsing. And I'm going to call it, or I'm going to need to put an icon in there. And I'll probably use the same icon that I used over here. Chart line. Icon chart line. To kind of illustrate that it's going to be bringing up historical data. And so now we need to figure out what we actually want to put in there. And I'll probably put the delete all the way on the far right. Not that it really matters too much. There might be something to be said about like, if I'm in mobile view, and I'm using my thumb, maybe I try to click this historical data button and I accidentally click delete, which we don't want. But probably the delete should have a little modal. But for now, I'm just going to leave it. Okay, so what do we actually want to show in this little historical view thing? So in my head, it's like we want to see the previous day, like look up the last day that this exercise was done and list in a terse form all of the values for the exercise for that day. Or maybe even just the latest one. But I kind of would like to see all of them. And those are probably going to be listed in like vertically. I could use a table, like a little table. Might not actually be a bad idea. So maybe instead of a P here, this is going to be table. And class table. And then inside here, there's going to be T-head, T-foot, T-body. I guess I would do like T-head. And then this would be like for each parameter in the set. Do the thing. So for each parameter in all parameters, we're going to need to use this same piece of logic here, which kind of makes me wish I didn't have to copy paste it, but whatever. For now, it's fine. We're going to have a th It's only shown if that's a thing, and it's going to have the parameter, or let's do it like this, parameter dot name. Right? So now if I expand one of these, it shows, you know, the 4 things. Because that's these 4. And they should be listed in exactly the same order, which is good. And I would also do, like, let's actually have a icon in here as well. Parent ID. What are we not fond of? Oh, parameter.id. So now if I click that, it'll have those little things in there. And then, you know, I'm just going to do a space like that. Okie doke. Cool. And so then we will have underneath here a T body. And we're going to do the same kind of thing here. But first we need to iterate over each historical set. Let's just do each set in historical sets set.id or set.exercise. So for each one of those, we're going to do something kind of like this again. So this is going to have a tr and then a td. And then inside that is going to be the set. I guess I'm kind of, what do you call it? Shadowing the set variable here. So I'm going to use a different name for that. Historical set.parameters ID for now. And really I should be using, actually, maybe I can just use this display string thing here so that it's consistent. This would be like that. And then here it would just be an equals. And this would be historical set instead of set. And parameter instead of param. Okay. So that's fine. The problem here is we're going to run into an error where historical sets is not set. That's something that we're going to need to populate. So let's go back up to our today page. And we're going to need to add a historical sets thing here. And let's just start by saying historical sets is an empty object. And that should at least get us past that one error. But the problem now is we can't iterate over the key here because the key is undefined. So what we really need to do is like historical sets is sets dot, and really maybe I should do it over all exercises. Exercises dot reduce historical sets exercise and give it the default empty object. And actually, let's just do this with a for loop. It might be a little bit simpler to understand. And kind of the advantage of a for loop here too is because we're not constructing the new object each time anyway. Using reduce doesn't really get us anything, if that makes sense. And to type this would be like a record of the exercise ID, which is a string, to an array of sets. Like that. And this, I wonder, I don't remember how I'm supposed to do that. It's like, I need some drizzle thing. To declare like the type of a table or whatever. Don't want custom types. Schema. I feel like I had this problem earlier and there was like some kind of like thing that I feel like used a dollar sign. Maybe not. Like if I look at these exercises, or okay, let's look at the type of user. How did I define that? This thing. That weird thing. Okay, so down here we would have, you know, probably there's a better way to do this. But it's also true that I don't want to shadow set because set in and of itself is like a thing in JavaScript, right? So I need to have a name for this set value. That's ideally something other than just actually set. So I could do like this type of set table, sets table dot infer select. And that should do it. But really, I kind of want this to be exported here as well. Export type, set type. And I'm just going to call it set type so that it doesn't, you know, have that issue with shadowing the set class. So then this would just be set type. Or maybe I should call it exercise set or something. Yeah, fine. And then we can import this. Okay, so then we would say like for const exercise of exercises. We're going to do a query. And again, there's probably a way to do this with fewer queries, but I'm just going to start by doing it in the most intuitive way, and then maybe we can optimize it later. Historical sets equals await. We can't really use any existing functions for this. So it's like get latest day sets or exercise. Exercise.id, user.id. Yeah. So then under exercises, or really under sets, there would be something where it's like get sets for exercise. except instead of starting date, that's not going to be a thing. We're going to need to filter it's kind of a complicated thing. So we need to have a date in the where clause. But what exactly that date is, the date is going to be the most recent date that has a set for this exercise. And I don't know, there's probably a way to do that again in one query, but I'm actually going to do another query here. Const latest day equals, and here I'm actually going to do await db dot select date sets table dot date. We're just going to select the date from sets table where, and here we're going to do this same kind of thing. And then oh, this needs to be in an and. I didn't copy that. And then we're also going to do an order by. And here we're going to order by the, we're going to say descending sets table dot date. And we're going to limit 1. Right? So what is this query going to do? It's going to select the date, select the highest date because we're ordering by date descending and we're limiting 1. So the highest date should be the most recent. Now the problem is we already know that we have one on today or whatever day whatever day the user is looking at as well. So we need to add another thing here where it's like, it also has to be less than sets table dot date and date. So now, like for instance, if I'm going to need to include in here as well the date which I guess is that date string. Because we don't want it to get the sets for the day you're looking at, just the ones for the day like before that. And so then this is going to get us that latest day. And then we're going to need to pass this into this other query as well. So it's like another equal clause equals sets table dot date latest day dot date. And this, we're going to need can do that. And we should also, if there aren't any, like if not latest day, then we should return an empty array to say that there has never been a day in the past where there were sets for this exercise. Okay. And so, but if there was a day in the past, it's going to return list of those exercises ordered by, we don't need the setstable.date in there, so it's just ordered by setstable.order. So now what's going to happen? Oh yeah, I still have to update my view here. So we get our historical sets, and basically we would be assigning that into like historical sets exercise.id equals that. What are you complaining about now? Let's see. Console.log historical sets. What do we actually have in here? It is an object where the ID is a number there. So that's fine. And that's an array. I mean, it seems like it's working, and it's not including today, so that's good. But when I'm actually checking that historical sets in the view, is it because of that? Just to confirm, that is the problem, right? So like if I do just each historical set in an empty array, we don't get an error. Okay. And if I do console.log set.exercise, what do we get? Oh, the exercise is fully populated. So this would be set.exercise.id. And it seemed like it's, yeah, doing okay here. And the rendering issue here, that's actually the same thing. If we go over here, like it's, you know, rendering it the same as this table. So there's definitely a bug there, but it's not a bug that we're introducing with this change. Okie doke. And I mean, the width of this table is one thing that we're going to need to deal with. I don't necessarily want it to be full width. If the user is in mobile view, though, you kind of do want it to be in full width. And I almost wonder if I want to not have the title be here, just the icon, or if that's like too opaque. I don't know. It seems it's probably okay. And maybe we should also list the date here somehow. I don't know if there's a way to put like a little I don't know. I think I'm going to have like a div here with that. And then inside that, do the table. And I'm also going to do a little, just a P, which is going to have the historical set. Or historical sets. 0.date. So now it lists the date there. And again, I'm going to probably improve that. I think I'm going to leave fixing the UI for this until next time though, because we are pretty much reaching our session end here. But one other thing I do need to do is this. So let's go manage exercises and make a new one. And now if I go back to the today page and add a new one, we get an error because that one doesn't have any historical sets at all. And so these things aren't going to work. And what I'm actually going to do here is use an if to only conditionally render this div if this dot length is greater than 0. Oh yeah, and then that all has to be indented. So now this, it's not actually going to do anything when I click that. So the other thing I need in here is a, maybe I'll actually do something up here like, put in some code. And I'm going to do like var historical sets. Let's just do historical. And then var has historical is if historical dot length is greater than 0. And then I can use these down here. So this can be has historical. Oops, has historical. And this would just be like historical 0.date. This would be each thing in historical like that. Is that working? Yep. So now, again, that one doesn't do anything, but if I click on this, it's going to bring up that table. Cool. And then what? Oh yeah, I wanted to disable this button. So I'm also going to have a thing here where it's like disabled equals not has historical or something like that. So now on these, it's like you can't even click it because there are no historical sets. Kind of simple. The user might wonder, why is this button disabled? So it would be nice if there was like a bit of an explanation there. Or even if it popped up this thing and it was like, just said none, maybe that would be better. So like, let's not disable this. Let's move this if underneath the div and move all this underneath the if. And then we would have like an else, and then it would just say like no historical data for this exercise. Okay, so now if I click that, it just says no historical data. If I click that, it pops up at the table. Seems good. Seems fine for now. Just as a test, if I go back to like the 21st and I add something for this exercise here instead, and then I go back to today, now that's the one that should show up instead of that not a number thing. It's still saying not a number, which isn't good. But it is showing the right date. So it's getting the stuff from that date instead of from a week ago. So the date parsing is fine, but why is that? Wait, where is that logging? Down here. Historical set.parameters. Why is it not? So the historical set. Okay, that's fine. It's like these values are all empty for some reason. If I go back, well, they are all empty, but I thought I set those. Oh, that's not working. Shoot. So what did I do wrong here? So these selects and inputs, they need to be within a form. And currently the form is there. It should be here. But then it should be here, and then all of this gets indented, except for this, right? Is that going to work, or is that just going to, no, it's not going to work. Okay, well, so the problem with this now, though, is like I've got this thing, but if I click it, it's actually submitting the form. So that should have fixed this issue, first of all. Let's check that. Yeah. But now when I click this, it's actually reloading the page, which I don't want. So like, I wonder if I could do like form equals that and just kind of like make it not do that. Yeah. Okay. So now that's working. And so now if I go to today and I click that, I can see the stats from yesterday. Fine. Okay. Still a lot of changes I could do to that, but you know, we built it, right? So the UI could always use improvements, but at least we have the quick view. Okay, so let's add these. So there's changes here. And really, we don't need all of these empty lines. Let's get rid of that. Also, we don't need that console log. Let's get rid of that. Yeah. Mixins thing, that's part of it too. Sets thing, let's just do all of this kind of at once. And the changes to index, just importing that and then reading the historical sets. So this would be like add quick view of last day's sets for into today page. And that should help people when they're trying to remember what they did the last time they were at the gym. Let's make sure we're not missing any console.logs that I forgot about. Well, there is one right here. Get rid of that. Remove unused console.log. Okie doke. And then we're going to commit this. I kept this separate because it is kind of, it's potentially impacting things other than that one page. Override user agent default margin for forms. Okie doke. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and commit those changes, or I mean push them. Cool. And progress is being made. that'll be it for today. Thanks, y'all. See you next week.